The information presented in this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast host or production team. The host has not independently verified the accuracy of the information provided by the guest. Therefore, the host and production team accept no legal responsibility or liability for any statements or opinions expressed in the podcast. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and exercise their own judgment when interpreting the content of the podcast.
Welcome to Tea Time.
David's Tea's Irish breakfast perfectly represents John Barrett. He is a legend of volleyball and the inventor of the spike serve. Irish breakfast is known for its bold and robust flavor, just as John's contributions to the sport of volleyball have been impactful and dynamic. His innovative spirit and strong presence on the court parallel the invigorating nature of this classic tea. With his Irish ancestry, this tea serves as a direct nod to his heritage, celebrating the rich cultural background that has undoubtedly shaped his journey and values. John played in Canada before going professional in Bologna, Italy. He stayed for multiple seasons but left for France after some unforeseen circumstances. After playing in Bordeaux for 2 years, once it was possible to return, he played out the rest of his career in Italy, went from Emilia to Catania, Modena, and many others before retiring in 1999. He's coached many summers with the national team and is the current head coach at the University of Toronto.
Pitter patter, let's get at it.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Volleyballers Sharing Stories, Spilling Tea. I have the man, the myth, the legend, John Barrett here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, just Morris, me. There's a story behind that. Thank you very much, Chris, for that. Morris, you got me on camera even. Lovely to be here. Thank you for the introduction and the tea, of course. Oh, that's how you pour it. That's what Kofi was all excited about. The pouring from the bottom.
Right. It's pretty cool because in this steeper, you can put in the leaves and then it has a lot of room to expand.
Really?
So it allows you to use like the whole thing. It's not just stuck in a small tea bag or something. Yeah, this is one of my favorites for one of my favorite people.
Oh,
Irish breakfast tea from David's Tea. Let's have a sip.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's very good. Very, very good.
Oh, great. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm so excited for this.
You're very welcome. It's exciting to be here.
I've heard so many stories.
None of them are true.
It's funny because all summer I was actually nervous to ask if the stories were true because I grew up with these being a part of like my identity, you know, of like this is the John Barrett, and if I asked you and you said they weren't true, then I just like my whole world would come to an end.
Then the bubble gets exploded, and
exactly.
It's all just words in the wind.
Exactly. So I thought of it as like Jerry choosing not to race.
Yes.
You know, where it's like he doesn't want to kill the legend that's there. So I was like, I choose not to ask. I don't want to know. But one of the things that I have heard multiple different stories about is I think something that is really big. A part of your story is the spin serve. What is your relationship with the spin serve?
Well, the spin serve, or the spike serve as it was initially called, is sort of my baby. It's something that I fell in love with. It was an idea that literally popped into my head in a moment when I saw a Chinese player in Shanghai, China in 1981 do a straight up jump on his tippy toes, toss the ball with some spin above his head, jump straight up and snapped it. And I saw him do this, and it was like a light bulb went off, a Despicable Me moment, light bulb. And I thought, you could do that with an approach. You could toss it up. How I framed it in my mind was, you're just hitting a high ball from behind the baseline. And that's what I like doing the best. Maybe it's what I did the best. And from there, I started to experiment with it. And I think what really drove me to want to do it is I had so many people tell me it could never be done. And when you're young, you're at times often ignorant to things. And I thought, why can't it be done? Just because no one's done it before doesn't mean you can't do it. And from there, it just grew. And in that tournament in Shanghai, after playing around with it in practice, for I think it was one practice, I tried it in a match for the very first time against Japan. And our coach at the time was Ken Maeda, a Japanese coach. His father was the vice president of the Japanese Federation. He came to Canada under sort of the pretension from his father to go to Canada and put them on the map. And Ken gave me incredible opportunities. And we were playing Japan, and I went back to serve, and I thought, well, why not now? So I tossed the ball up and took my approach, took a swing, and the serve got blocked. Because at that time, you could block the serve. And there was a middle blocker standing at that. I just went straight up, blocked it straight down. Ken looked at me and gave her one of these, timeout. And I put my head down. I was walking over towards him, kind of slowly, the shuffle of shame, like, what's going to happen to me now? And he looked at me, and Ken spoke kind of broken English, and he said, John, what's that? And I said, Ken, I think I can do it. And he said, he looked at me and kind of shook his head like he would do, and he said, okay, do it, every time. And from that moment, it just grew. And it's sort of a perfect example how coaches can just help young athletes flourish. And if Ken had shut me down, I'm sure it would have started to progress anyways. In that tournament, the Brazilians were starting to play around with it a bit, and the former Yugoslavia at that time. But I had a real knack for it. I had a natural handball connection, and I was big and strong from my track and field training days, so I could jump and I could swing my arm. And from there it progressed, where I eventually took it to Italy when I went to Italy for my first year in 1985-86. And in the very first match I played against Modena, Italy, we beat them 3-0, and the famous coach Julio Velasco, the Argentinian who coached Italy to 3 world championships, actually 2, I think. The third was by Bebeto, the Brazilian coach. He was coaching that team, and we won 3-0, and if I remember the number directly, I think I had 12 direct aces. And Julio, being the coach that he is, always looking for a way to go forward, after that match, what I'm told is he had everybody on his team spike serving, and by the end of that season in Italy, every team had at least 2 spike servers on the team. It was a weapon that was never considered before, and it was really fun in the early stages because nobody knew how to pass it, so it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And now there's 12-year-old girls doing it. And every time I see that, and my heart fills with joy because it was a thought, it was an idea, and it was just something that I thought, hey, this would be fun. And it was natural for me because I had a very aggressive style of playing, and I started playing volleyball because I just wanted to hit the ball as hard as I could. And I'm actually baffled when people don't hit the ball as hard as they can when they have the opportunity to. So that's the story in a nutshell, and it changed the game. It's evolved, the game is involved, but if it wasn't for Ken, I never would have had the opportunity to do it. So thank you, Ken Maeda.
That's awesome. That's great. What a story. So the inventor of the spin serve. Do you give that autonomy also that Ken gave you to your team when they want to experiment with something?
Absolutely. We have an idea of how we play the game in certain situations, but in practice, we do specific drills for creativity, and it has kind of 2 sides to it. in one phase of the drill, you have to hit the ball as hard as you can, because you have to learn to hit bad balls well. And the only way to do that is to do it in practice by swinging on balls that maybe in a match you normally wouldn't swing on because you don't want to make the direct air. The flip side of that drill is I want guys to create their hitting range, their arsenal of shots by using shots that they don't have. And I'll have profiled my athletes to know what they have in their toolkit. So if they use a shot that they don't use normally, they get 2 or even 3 points depending on how well it's executed. You're never going to use a shot that you don't own at, 13 all in the 5th set. You're going to do something that you do. And you have to be creative, and you have to do it in practice and have some success to have the courage to be able to do it under duress in a tight situation in the match, for you to start to develop that art of which one when, is what I call attacking, the art of which one when. Every situation has perhaps different options, but there's normally a best one, depending on your hitting range and arsenal of shots. So as you fill your file folder with micro cues and information of being in that same situation over and over and over again, eventually you just start to make the right choice. And that's why I call it the art of which one when, because it is an art. It's an art of understanding, what do I do now? And you get to a point where it just comes natural. There's no thinking involved because the game's too fast. It's just like floating middle block or bang off the handout. And you just see it and you feel it and you go to it, and it's a beautiful thing.
Definitely. Are you also trying to work on innovating something, or are you just trying to give that autonomy to your team?
I'm always thinking about things, how to do something in a different way, to become more efficient at it, to coach in the future. My mind's always thinking like that. And there's a lot of mistakes. I'll try a lot of things that just don't work, but I really honestly believe that that's the way forward. And it's not my line. It's, Rezende from Brazil. He said, if you're coaching in the present, you're coaching in the past. And so I'm always trying to think of ways to do things better, something that could change the game. Revolutionize the game is a big word. I don't think in that term. I just think, is there a way we can do something that might make us better, and can we do it more efficiently? So yeah, I'm always kind of thinking like that.
That's great. And for me, one of my favorite moments of the summer was one of our first trainings. Guys are throwing up the ball and hitting kind of a half-court spike serve. And you came in and gave them tips. And I thought, the man who invented this is now giving tips to generations of people later than him. And I don't think anyone actually knew your role in creating the spike serve, because I was getting chills. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. That, like, this is a moment, that people should remember, and that I'll remember for sure. But for them, it was just a really good coach with their team, showing them a technique.
Yeah. And frankly, that's the way it should be, because it's their world now. I am an old guy, an old coach and I'm glad to be an old coach. I hope I become a very old coach. And they don't need to know what I did or who I am. They just need to know that I want to help them, and I have experience and ideas that perhaps can help them. And everyone's different. Something might clue in off of one key word. That's why it's so, to me, interesting coaching, because you're looking for that key to each different player. Everybody's got a different key, a different way, a different mode for developing and connecting. And if you can find that one way to connect with an athlete, you might just open up a whole different world for them, that they start experimenting, they start thinking in a different way. And yeah, I love the whole technical part of it. I mean, I love to talk technical volleyball, which we do, which is fantastic. My wife, who's a volleyball person, she will tolerate me for a short period of time, and then she's like, that's enough. That was 12 minutes of direct technical talk. I can't do anymore. I'm done for today. So, yeah, so thank you for tolerating my technical talk.
Thank you. It's my honor, seriously. So that's you as a coach. You also had an extensive and successful playing career. You alluded to it already, your first time going to Italy, doing the spike serve. Do you have any, like for me, when I travel, I have different stories from each place that I've gone to. And I feel like I'm leaving a part of myself in that place, but I'm also taking some of that experience and it's shaping me as a person. So there's kind of an exchange there. For you, I can see like there being a puzzle, your whole body of taking those experiences from other places and then leaving your mark in different countries. Where would you say that you have the most of those puzzle pieces on you from?
Very good question, but it jumps out in my mind very clearly. Bologna, Italy. It was my first professional team. I played there for 4 years, had an amazing experience, met some incredible people. It opened up a world that I didn't know existed. I was, a young player from Canada. I was 22 years of age, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Italy and play volleyball. I played in the Olympics where Canada's a very good national team. We're on the top of the world. We know a lot about volleyball, international volleyball. I could not have been more wrong. A world of knowledge and expertise and technique and passion and caring about every little aspect of the game and the person and the team just exploded in front of my eyes. And it really, really changed for me when I learned to speak the language, which was just a natural, organic process because I never opened a book. Actually, I did go to one session with a teacher, but she didn't speak English and I didn't speak Italian. So after one session, I'm like, I'm not going back. But I had a very good Italian friend. His name is Stefano Recine. His son actually has played with the national team, has played for top A1 teams in Italy. Stefano is the overlooker of their grassroots talent in Italy now. He has had an illustrious career as a general manager in many different of the top teams. He basically taught me everything about how things work in Italy. We started off speaking a little bit of Italian, mostly English. He spoke broken English. And by the time I finished my time in Bologna, it was all Italian. We lived right beside each other. We drove to practice together. We ate together. And he taught me the ropes. Don't read the press. Don't read about yourself. If you're going to go out after a match on Saturday night, never go out if you lose. If you're going to go out, it's better to leave your city and go out somewhere else because people know who you are. The Italians follow every sport. They know who you are. I can remember walking down the street and having really, at that time, an elderly man say, "Oh, you're out. You better play good tonight." And I'd be like, "What? What did he say to me?" And people would make comments to you. Like, it blew my mind. And then when I started to understand that volleyball in Italy is kind of like hockey in Canada, and people watch it, and people know you, and the teams and their managers, they know everything you do and everybody you hang out with and every place you go. I played with another Canadian for the first 2 years, Stelio Duraco. And in our first year, we came into practice on Monday. At that time, we played Saturday nights, had Sundays off. And the general manager said, "So," and Stelio translated it to me because he didn't say it to me directly. He's like, "You and John were out at a discotheque on Saturday night, and you guys drank 10 beers, and they were Becks." And Stelio, I'm like, "What did he say?" Stelio told me, I'm like, "What are you talking about? How does he know that? How is that possible? And why? And who?" And Stelio just laughed and said, "Don't worry about it. Just keep winning." And so, which is very, very true. In Italy, they're very focused on everything. And whether your team is built to compete for the championship, if it's a middle Classifica team where you're expected to stay within the top 5 to 8, or the team is built not to go down to the next division, every match takes on a lot of importance. And how your week goes often depends on how you did in the weekend. When you win, everyone's happy around the team. When you lose, you know, the faces aren't the same, so there's extra scrutiny on you. So it really, really taught me a lot how to be a professional. And I loved it. I wanted to do it as long as I could. I did it till I was almost 40 years of age, and I would have kept doing it if somebody was willing to pay, you know, an old guy to play volleyball. So I had the best job in the world, I said at times, because I had the opportunity to play in 9 different cities over 14 years, and a couple of those came in Catania and in a city called Latina and Loreto in Italy, and I was close to the water, close to the sea. So I played volleyball and I swam in the sea, and I thought, it doesn't get much better than this. So I had my dream job, and at times it's very surreal that I went through it. I love the Italians. I have many friends I still keep in contact with, and Bologna, when the stadium was full, 8,000 people, and we would come up from underneath. The change rooms were underneath. We'd come up this stairwell and we'd come up to the Rocky music for big matches. And I can still remember playing against, it was the Soviet Union at that time. I'm really aging myself here, but it was basically the Russian national team, and coming up to this massive, massive crowd, and we were playing them in the Champions League. We lost 3-0 in Moscow. We came to Bologna and we won 3-2. And it was just incredible, because on the other side of the net was one of the most famous middle blockers ever. Our younger crowd may not remember the name or know the name. Alexander Savin was his name. He was a freak of a human that had the net here, and he could reach over and put his hands on the ball basically before you hit it. And when we played them in Moscow for the first time, we were warming up, and I was, you know, being professional, doing my thing, and I thought, I'm going to take a look at him. I'm going to take a look at him while trying not to take a look at him, because he was, you know, kind of my hero. And so I look over, and he was just stretching, had this big mustache, and I look at him, and he smiles and just gives me a wink of the eye. It was one of the coolest moments I have ever had. I thought, I hope one day I can be as cool as that guy is, because that was very, very cool. And then he proceeded to block me so hard that I had no idea what happened.
That's funny. So part of your story is that you went out and someone said that you better play well tonight.
Yeah.
And so I think that's because there's a delay for when the game gets aired.
Yeah.
So you would actually go out and people wouldn't know whether or not you won or lost, how you played. You could even watch yourself play live.
Not really at that time. That happened during the day. I was walking in the city. I went out in the morning before 12:30, because at 12:30 the siesta would come at that time in Italy, and all the shops would close down until 3:30 in the afternoon. I just went out for a morning walk in the center of town, and an elderly, well-dressed gentleman, because in Italy everyone's always well-dressed, and he said to me, like, you better play well tonight, Barrett. And that's how they said my name in Italian, John Barrett. So, and I'm like, what? Of course I'm going to play well, but who are you to talk to me like that? But they did not, it wasn't malicious. They were a part of your life. Like, you were a foreigner, they knew about you, they read about you, they watched you, and they're very, very warm people, and they invite you into their lives. But you live in a society, you live in a place that's not normal for Canadians. You're close, you're never sort of alone. I can remember the first time being at a table on a busy Sunday night in a pizzeria with another person at the table for 4, and having another couple put at that same table for four. Like you're sitting right beside two people you don't even know. And being Canadians, we love a good booth, right? So it just blew my mind, the difference in the cultures, how close you were to everything, and people knew your business. And I'm kind of a private guy, so people knowing my business felt kind of weird. But by the end of the time I was there, I would be, hanging off my teammates. Guys would grab my face. I remember the president in Bologna, my first president, used to come up before matches and grab my face and pinch it like a typical Italian thing. And it drove me crazy. And I'd say, Stelio, you gotta tell him to stop touching my face, man. I hate it. And Stelio wouldn't tell him because he loved watching him do it and see my reaction. But after 15 years, guys could kiss me on the cheek and I'm hanging over top of them. And it's just, you really grow into the culture if you love it. And according to my wife, I used to sleep talk in Italian in my sleep. So that I really sort of integrated, and it was an amazing, amazing experience.
That's great. So you gave a couple tips about learning the language, taking care of business on the court. Are there other tips that athletes could make sure that they try for when they go overseas, maybe for the first time?
I think it's really important to try to understand and get to know the people, the culture, how they are, what they do, why they do it, to give you the opportunity and possibility to have the best experience. The Italians in particular love it when you try to speak the language. They love it when you come out, when you're invited to go out, to whether it's a team dinner at somebody's house. Even if you can't communicate clearly, it's appreciated that you're trying. I mean, as a professional athlete, when you're in there, I understand there are times when you're tired, you don't feel like doing it, you focus on yourself, but your world can get very, very small if you get too isolated. And then when the difficult times come, which they always do when you're an athlete, because, win or lose. And at times, if you are in a situation where you're too isolated and your team is losing, your world can get small. You want to have people that are going to support you. And if you open up and they find out who you are, what makes you tick, and you're interested in, how they do things, even though they may seem, weird, awkward, wrong, you can't dictate how another culture does what they do. And learning that was probably the key to being, happy and content in any situation. Like I said, I played in, 9 different cities over 14 years. And, win, lose, good, bad, big apartment, small apartment, good car, bad car that blows out a tire on the highway. I never had a bad experience. I loved every bit of my experience. I guess I was, very curious and kind of adventurous when I was young. But opening up to the people is really, really key to, I think, enjoying and maximizing your experience. I should tell the story about chasing a guy out of the gym when he kicked one of our players in the butt after a match, and I found myself in a field. Have I ever told you that story?
No, please.
Okay. Well, had many different experiences in Italy, and 2 of those years I was in France, Bordeaux, France. But we would play at times on courts the Italians would call, that's Campo Caldo. That's a hot court. You can't win there. I'd be like, what do you mean you can't win there? No. The crowd's crazy. You can't win there. And I remember saying to Stelio, who was my translator for 2 years, Stelio, what are they talking about? You can't win there. Like, the court's the same size. The ball's the same size. We got a referee. You put it down on their side more than they put it down on yours, you win. He goes, no, John, just let it go. They have this, idea that, you can't go there and win because the crowd's really hot and passionate and stuff. And I remember playing in a match in a city called Santa Croce, where actually, I think Glenn Hogue and Tom Jones, two of our former Olympians, played in their first year. And it was the ultimate Campo Caldo. The people were incredibly passionate. And I played there a number of years after my first year in Italy. And I was coming off the court. We had beaten the home team, so the crowd was livid. And it was in the Toscana region of Italy, where they're known for being very passionate people. All Italians are passionate, but particularly so in this region. And walking towards our change room, I saw this guy. He was a tifoso, a super fan, and somebody had just opened a door and let him in from the outside. And he slid in, and one of my players was just going around the corner down the hallway to our team, and this guy came up behind him and booted him in the butt as hard as he could, like a soccer kick. And I'm like, what the hell? And he turned and looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, now I've got you. He turned, and he ran out the door, and I went after him. And it's nighttime. And I must have chased him for 200 or 300 meters until I found myself in a field, in a farmer's field in the darkness with my shoes, my knee pads still up. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And what if the door is locked when I go back and there's 200 mad fans waiting for me? So I turned around, I went back to the palazzetto, the arena, the place of sport, and there was the setter for my team, Connie Montanari, had the door open, peeking out, and he's like, come on, John, get in. So I went in the door, and he goes, what are you doing, man? Here, they're crazy. I'm like, don't worry about it. And it just blew my mind, right? Like, just think about it. Like, if that happened here, like, you're letting fans in, and they're booting people in the butt. And I played for another team where we lost at home, and one of our fans booted the referee in the butt. And so the consequence was we had to play, I think, 2 matches at Porte des Cues with doors closed, no fans. But just one, I can see what was happening right in front of me. The fan comes up, the referee's got off the stand, he's walking towards the dressing room, soccer kick right in the butt. Just craziness, like stuff that blew my young mind. Just like, what is going on here? It was definitely something different, but I loved it. Like the wilder it was, the more I loved it. That's just kind of what I was drawn to as a young man.
Which is interesting because you went to Italy and you loved it there, but then you left and went to France.
I went to France for 2 years because I had to. And the story there is when you first go to Italy, it is not like this anymore. They've changed this. But at that time, the team had the player, but they also owned your rights. You still hear about it in soccer when there's a big transfer of a player from, let's say, Real Madrid to Manchester United or Juventus in Italy. The team has to buy the rights to the player, and then they have to pay their contract. So the rights in Italy are called your cartellino. So your cartellino is your rights. The most important thing at that time when you first went to Italy is you have a price set for your cartellino, your rights, that when you leave that team, another team can't ask any more than that. Like you could set it for, I remember Dusty Dvorak was an American setter set for the American gold medal team in 1984. And he was playing for Parma in Italy, and I was playing in Bologna. And we were chatting before a match, and he asked me, so what did you set your rights at, your cartellino? What's the price of your cartellino when you want to leave Bologna? And I'm like, what's a cartellino? And he said, you don't know about the cartellino? I'm like, no, I don't know about the Cartolino. And he said, well, I set mine for $10,000 that if I go somewhere, and the team, the longer you stay with the team, the more they've invested in you, so the more they ask for you when you go to leave. After 4 years in Bologna, I could have stayed there still, but I wanted to go somewhere else. I was also churning out points at a very high rate, and it was just the beginning of stats that were statting how many points a match did you individually churn out. I was leading the list at that time, and in my opinion, I wasn't getting paid appropriately. So I wanted to maximize my earning potential and be compensated fairly for how I was playing. And when I wanted to leave Bologna, I couldn't go anywhere else in Italy because nobody could afford to buy my Cartolino and pay my contract on top of that. So I had to leave and go to Bordeaux, France for 2 years, because after 2 years, your rights were your own. They came back to you. So I went back to Italy, and I had written in my contract every time my rights were mine. Zero, couldn't ask anything for them. And then I jumped around from team to team for the best contract I could get, and also because I really liked changing teams and seeing different parts of the country, and that to me was a big part of the thrill of seeing different areas, all the way down to Catania, Sicily, where I had a wonderful experience down there, but it was a completely different world compared to northern Italy. And not knowing about my Cartolino probably cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. But hey, I mean, what am I going to do or say at this point? Nothing I can do to change it. But I guess on that point, the young players say, read the fine print, know where you're going, know what you need to know, and have an agent that you can trust. And don't ever trust on just words. Find out for yourself. Really delve into the process of being a professional athlete in a foreign country.
That's a great tip.
I think it's an important one.
Now, you mentioned Catania a couple times.
Yeah.
Catania.
Yeah.
Do you have any other stories from Catania?
Ooh, yeah, lots of them, I guess.
Because I think we were in practice and it came up.
You
had a doozy.
Well, I had a number of them. It's a different country. I mean, even Northern Italians that go down to the island of Sicily and play, if the Sicilians are speaking in their dialect, even Northern Italians can't understand them. So it's just different in so many ways. I had a teammate, Piero Dell'Angelo, who actually is the general manager there now of their team in A1. And he took me aside one day and gave me a great little tip. He said, John, I know you've played in the north part of Italy, and he goes, I know you're a passionate guy, and I know you can get a little hot-headed at times, so I just want to give you a piece of advice, because people drive like crazy. And I loved it. There's less rules. That's why I loved it. There's less rules. You can not do whatever you want, but you don't have to stop at stop signs if there's nobody there. That makes sense to me. If there's no one around, why stop? So Piero said to me one day, he goes, when you get in a fender bender, and he didn't say if, he goes, when? He goes, when you get in a fender bender, don't make a big scene about it. Whether it's your fault, his fault, their fault, just get out, be cool. Because if you cause the other party to lose face in public and make a big scene and be loud, he goes, they won't do anything right away, but they'll find out who you are, where you live, and there'll be payback. And I'm like, oh, that's good to know. And it happened. I got into 2 fender benders where got out of my car, so did the other guy at that time. Looked at each other, looked at our cars. I'm like, I'm good. He's like, I'm good, no problem. We both had a bit of damage, but it was all good. And off off we went. And the same thing in my apartment building. I could speak Italian at that time when I went to Catania. So, you know, the elderly ladies would be walking down the stairs in the morning going to buy their, you know, fruit or whatever. They shop every day. And I would say, buongiorno, signora, you know, just happy, peppy, going to practice with my bag over my shoulder. And they would look right through me, or not even look at me. Like, I'm like, whoa, I exist. And I brought it up to Piero, who was from Catania. And he said, John, they don't know who you are. They know you're a foreigner. And they'll find out, you know, why you're there, who you are. And then they'll become very friendly. But at first, they don't know you. And he said, we're an island people, right? It's an island. It's part of Italy, but it's an island. So there's a closed mentality. And he said, and when they invite you into their houses, which they did, go. He goes, because if you don't go, it's considered offensive. So when they invited me, I went. And ladies would bring me food. They knew I was there by myself. They'd bring me food. It was amazing to be in a culture so different from what I was used to, and just learning the different ways. And people like Piero helping me along was incredible, because the culture is so different, right? And you have to learn the intricacies of a different culture. I mean, it took me the longest time to get used to people just looking at me and staring at me, because when I first went to Italy, to Bologna, you know, young Canadian guy, running shoes, jeans, and t-shirts. And I had a mullet and a stash. And being completely unaware of myself or my surroundings at the time, bumbling through life, just never living outside my own personal moment, I never realized that guys my age didn't have facial hair, let alone stashes. The only ones that had stashes were like 85-year-old men and Bulgarians, right? So they knew I wasn't either one of those. And once I learned how to sort of fit in, learn the language, dress in black, and, you know, become well-groomed and look like one of them, I could actually pull it off for 4 or 5 minutes, speaking Italian, until someone would say, you're not Italian, are you? And I'd say, no. That to me was the ultimate compliment. If I can get through 4 or 5 minutes until they picked up on my accent. I was dressed in black, had my hair slicked back, my facial hair was trimmed, and I loved it. I loved, you know, being one of them. Take a little pause here for 1 second.
Of course.
Okay, shall we just pause for a second? Okay, we don't have to press anything. We're
I
just
can
pausing.
edit everything out afterwards.
Okay.
So.
Spilling tea, spilling tea, spilling tea, spilling the beans.
My favorite is when Dallas was mic checking.
Yeah.
Pumpkin pie, pumpkin
Yeah.
pie. And I watched it from the beginning so I could hear that they were doing sound check. But so many people came on and were like, what is he saying? Why is he just saying pumpkin pie right now? Like,
Yeah, that is very strange.
I love it.
Pumpkin pie. Oh my God, different stories, spilling the beans. There's just so many things. I mean, well, we spent time together this summer, and it just comes up.
For
like
sure.
we're talking, and I'm like, I've got a story, and I do have very, very many stories, and apparently all my old teammates from the '84 Olympics tell me that I've got a very good memory for different times. Like, I remember a lot of stuff, and I honestly don't think that I have a great memory, but when something sort of intrigues me or something, I remember it very, very explicitly. And, you know, when I think about just the experience of, you know, traveling the world with the national team, and we traveled a lot back then. We had a lot of money as a federation after finishing 4th in the Olympics. In fact, that was the day when we lost the bronze medal to Italy on August 11th, 1984, which was my birthday. August 11th, 1984, I turned 22 years of age. And that was the day that I sort of realized, I had the realization that not everything works out for you sport-wise, because up until that point in my life, if I desired something, I worked for it, and it happened. And we traveled a lot, and I remember before I got into volleyball, I was a high jumper and shot putter, and I had a incredibly impactful coach. His name was Cecil Smith. Bloody hell, don't call me Cecil. He was a Welshman, and he worked us very hard. In this day and age, it would be probably considered to be somewhat over the line. But what Cecil Smith did for me, training me as a track athlete, prepared my body to have the structural tolerance to be able to withstand basically the beatings of Ken Maeda. I'm joking about that, but I never thought any of it was over the line, even when Ken Maeda slapped me in the face, which a few people know this story. It was my first trip to Asia. I think we went to Japan, Korea, and China on that trip. I was an 18-year-old kid. We had played against Japan in front of Ken's father, who was the vice president of the Japanese Federation, very high up, and we lost 3-0, and Ken lost face. And after the match, we're in the hallway, and he was talking to us, yelling at us, and I was, being an 18-year-old doofus, and looking at, oh, look at that piece of fluff. It looks like a butterfly up in the corner or something. And I was the closest one to him, and I wasn't looking him in the eye, which is very disrespectful, as I found out later in Japan. He just, out of pure rage and reaction, reached out and slapped me across the face. And I, being from a kid in Rexdale, grew up in, let's just say, a bit of a tough neighborhood, where rolling around on the concrete or asphalt was a regular thing. I went for him, just instinct. I went to grab him, like, you hit me, I'm gonna hit you, buddy. And I can still remember the face of two former teammates, Larry Plenard and my very good friend to this day, Tom Jones, grabbing me by the arm and then pulling me away, and me yelling, "You'll never hit me again." Ken saying, "You will never play again." And this was my first summer with the team. And Tom was laughing the whole time, and I remember thinking, what are you laughing about? My career is over before it's even started. So we were on the bus going back to the hotel, and I'm like, oh man, I messed up. Like, this is done before it's even over. Went back up to the hotel room. Can't remember who I was rooming with. I think it was Al Coulter, and he's like, what's up? I'm like, my phone's gonna ring. And he's like, what do you mean? Phone's gonna ring. I'm gonna be told to come down to the lobby. I'm gonna get the envelope with a ticket. Someone's gonna take me to the airport. I'm gonna be on a flight going back to Canada. He's like, what are you talking about? Phone rings. It wasn't Ken, it was Al Leong, who was the manager of the team. John, can you come down to the lobby? And everything sinks, right? It's over before it's even started. And I go down to the lobby. There's Big Al. Big Al was about 5'1". He wasn't that big, but there was Ken sitting on a little bench across the lobby. And Al's like, go over there and sit down with Ken. So I go walking across the lobby to sit down on a small bench in a small lobby of a small hotel in the middle of Tokyo, thinking it's over before it started. I sit down there with Ken, and he's like, John, we must talk. I'm like, okay, Ken, I'm sorry about my reaction. He's like, yes, very, very disrespectful to not look at me when I'm speaking. I'm like, I'm sorry, I understand, Ken. I said, but in my culture, where I'm from, if you hit somebody, you have to be ready and expecting that someone's going to hit you back. And he nodded his head like Ken would do and said, okay, I understand. But from that moment there spawned this incredible relationship. I told him, I said, I'll do anything for you. I'll train 8 hours a day. I'll run into that wall head first for you. I said, you just can't touch me. And just spawned into an incredible relationship. The man that gave me the green light to spike serve when apparently nobody could do it. Can't be done. Okay, yeah, it's funny because I think you achieve in different ways in your sporting life when you're young and you're not sort of held down with all this information on what you can and cannot do. You find a way through your youthful energy and ignorance just to play freely, to play a game and be who you are, to really go after things without the knowledge of whether you're supposed to be able to do something or not. It's a beautiful, free time of your life, and I always say to players, and I say it jokingly, but I say it true as well. I just tell them it's revel in your youth. Just grab it and go. As you get older, and I had a chance to play, until I was, almost 40, so I had this whole gamut that I went through, and by the end, you achieve because you've learned so much, and you understand the moment, you understand the gravity of the moments that you're in. And my whole view of my opposition, my opponent, my enemy when I was young, I used to look at my opponent as my enemy. I despised them. I really, really wanted to beat them, almost to the point of have them feel like shame that they lost. The whole spectrum of my development as a player and then as a coach is completely different. You have to respect your opponent and practically love your opponent. Without your opponent, you don't exist. And what you're really looking at is you're looking in a mirror, right? Your opponent has the right to want it as much as you do. So you have to respect that. And volleyball is a gentleman's game. There's a net in between. So you can compete hard, but don't disrespect your opponent, because when you disrespect your opponent, what you're really doing is disrespecting yourself. And that massive shift for me from being, I guess, young and savage in a way to really loving every moment of everything I do in volleyball, coaching-wise and experience-wise, and this summer, our experience, just the complete shift in it. And it's, I guess, like the saying, you can't fight wars with old men, right? You know too much. So.
What an unbelievable way to finish. That's fantastic. I could listen to you tell stories all day. And I was blessed with that ability when we were in Dominican Republic, where I could just listen to your stories.
Well, it was a great fit. I truly enjoyed and have learned volleyball along the way with you. You've had an incredible journey, and I love hearing your stories. I love watching you work with young players, and I always admired your technical ability as a player and how you pass that along in your way. It's been great. It's been a wonderful experience for me as well.
I appreciate that. We don't need to lie to everyone.
Well, we're not lying.
But that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
So to finish every episode, I want to play a game.
Ooh.
And as in this game, you can win your very own Volleyballers Sharing Stories Spilling Tea Cup. Okay? Maybe these go on sale at some point. I don't know. But right now, they're exclusive for only people who win their game on the podcast. And as the godfather of the spike serve, my game that I thought would be fun is to rate on how well you think people did the spike serve this last VNL. So I have 7 people here.
Okay.
And they
are we talking statistically, or do I like their serve artistically, and do we have an array like from bombers to seam finders to?
So it goes based on amount of aces that they got. I want it to be very objective.
Yep.
So all of these players got aces in VNL.
Yep.
There's 7 of them. It's kind of a different system that I wanted to use because I wanted to...
Pure aces.
It's just aces, and it's the order that counts.
Yeah.
So let's say you have them in the right order, except the last person is in the first spot.
Yeah.
You would actually have all of them wrong. But that's not how I'm going to count
Okay.
it. I'm going to count it the order.
Okay.
So if you have one or two out of order, then you still win.
Okay.
So there's 7 people. In order to move it, you have to select someone and then move them into a spot.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll let you select and move who you like, and we can see the end result.
Okay.
So go in Namir up in 1.
Grozer didn't play very much, though. Tricky me. Grozer's one of my favorite players because he's almost 40 years of age, playing at a ridiculous high level, and he is the ultimate professional, and from what I understand, a very good teammate. I believe he helped mentor our young Steve Marr at one point. Okay, he didn't play much. That was tricky of you, very tricky. Okay, now I'm just guessing. I'm guessing. I could be incorrect. Probably am, but what the hell? No swings, no homers. No guts, no glory. God, geez, ooh, no. It just doesn't feel right having DeFalco ahead of a Canadian. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. The Grozer, I don't think he played much at all, so we're going to do that.
Oh, I don't know what happened here. Oh, I think we were playing with, I don't even know how to... Okay, so the order, this is your final answer.
Yeah.
We have Namir, Nishida, Marr, Lepke, Lucarelli, DeFalco, Grozer.
Yeah.
Final answer.
That's it.
Okay. I'm going to go to my list quick to see how it looks, just to make sure.
I think
DeFalco's
higher, I think, but I'm not going to put him higher, so there we go.
So unbelievably, I'm gonna give you your feedback here. You got every one of them right.
Come on.
You went 7 for 7.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you. I had to check because even hearing you talk, you were convincing me that I was wrong. Because I made the game. I wrote all the numbers down. I was looking at it for the last 5 minutes to make sure that I knew. But you got 7 for 7.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
So Namir was the highest with 40.
Yeah.
He had an unbelievable amount.
He's a machine.
Nishida had 19.
Yeah.
Marr 14.
Yeah.
Eric 12.
Yeah.
Lucarelli 11. DeFalco 8. And Grozer 4.
Yeah. Grozer would have led the whole thing if maybe not. Namir aces more than Grozer now, but Grozer can blow you up at any moment as well. Hey, that was fun. I've been stressing on this game for weeks now because you told me about this.
That's fantastic.
Wow.
So the godfather of the spike serve knows his stuff. Can't believe it. That's great.
I cannot believe that. You didn't just make that up at the end.
I did not make that up.
Chris, what a pleasure working with you and chatting with you, my friend.
It was a pleasure. It was all mine. Thank you so much.
Thank
I hope you enjoyed the tea.
I love the tea. Tea for two, two for tea, me for you, and you for me. Oh,
great.
Man.
Thank you so much.
Hey, that was so much fun.
I could have done this for 4 hours.
Oh, easily. When you said, well, let's wrap it up, I'm wrapping it up. This is fun.
I mean, you don't need to. If there's other things you want to share, I just don't want to take up all day for you.
You probably have a hard time believing that when I was young, I was super, super shy. Very, very shy. If people came over to our house and I wasn't in the room when they came into the house, I had a block. I couldn't walk into a room full of people. And now here we're talking about stuff like, I can't believe I got those. You didn't just make that up at the end and you were going to say that I got 7 and a 7 because...
I can show you the numbers. I have... I have it written down.
I've been stressing about that. I'm like, because you had okay, but I was gonna have Grozer up there, but Grozer didn't play, man. How do you get aces if you don't play?
That's right. I tried to throw a few curveballs in there, and then Mar, Lefty, and Lucarelli were all close.
Yeah, they were all.
This was the hard one. I thought this was going to be the toughest one. For
Yeah,
you.
and I knew that Steve and Eric were close together, and I thought, Nishida's more of a direct bomber, right? Like he bombs more than they do.
Right.
And DeFalco was kind of a tricky guy, but that was fun. I really enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah,
I
great.
enjoyed the whole summer, actually.
Yeah, me too.
It was fantastic.